Hi everybody, welcome back to Leah's Library. I'm very happy to be with you again today. I'm really excited about the books that we're going to read today because they all have to do with something magical and wonderful and this incredible fantasy that we can create with our imaginations. So today we're going to go on 3 adventures. One is called When the Sun Rose by Barbara Helen Berger. The second one is called Sylvester and the Magic Pebble by William Steig. And the third one, Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs by Judi Barrett, drawn by Ron Barrett. You might recognize that book. That's a classic. They even made a movie out of it. The movie has nothing to do with the book. So if you've never read the book, but you've seen the movie, you're going to be surprised, hopefully pleasantly surprised, because the book is fabulous. It's one of my favorites. So let's dive into some magic today. We'll start with When the Sun Rose by Barbara Helen Berger. When the sun rose today, a friend came to visit me. Look at that big, beautiful rose in the sky. She came in a carriage bright as the sun. Look at who's pulling that carriage. Beautiful lion. Even the stones on the road were shining. You see the shining stones? Look at that. She's going to visit this little house. Her lion stopped at my gate. Wow. So beautiful. Then she got out of her carriage and came to my door. I opened it and I said, "Come in. Please come in." Wow. The lion came in with her. I was afraid, yet his feet were quiet as sunlight on the floor, and my whole playhouse became warm. Look, their 2 dolls are meeting. Nice to meet you. We sat down and had some honey cake and tea. The lion had blueberries and cream. It's a pretty magical gown she's wearing. Do you see the butterflies that follow her wherever she goes? That's pretty magical. Then our dolls traded dresses. The lion purred. You seem very content. And we made rainbows. All day. See that picture? The lion is sleeping. They're painting a picture of each other, and the rainbow connects them. They're spending a lot of time on that beautiful painting. Then my friend had to say goodbye. Her carriage became gold as sunset. Goodbye, lion, sweet lion. Will you come again? I asked. Yes, she said, I promise. Her carriage is indeed turning gold. All the way I watched her going home. Even the stones had long shadows. It's now starting to turn orange. Do you remember how bright yellow it was when she came in the morning with the sunrise? Now it is dark. My friend is gone. But she will keep her promise, I know. For the rainbow we made still shines on the wall. Look at all those beautiful roses she left behind, too. That painting is beautiful. And my house is full of roses. Look at those magical roses. They're like glowing. Can you imagine what an incredible play date that would be? When the sun rose. That is a magical story. Our next magical story is we're going to take a little trip into a world where animals dress up like humans. And some very magical things happen to a little donkey named Sylvester. And there he is. Sylvester and the Magic Pebble by William Steig. Or Steig. Sylvester Duncan lived with his mother and father at Acorn Road in Oakdale. One of his hobbies was collecting pebbles of unusual shape and color. On a rainy Saturday during vacation, he found a quite extraordinary one. It was flaming red, shiny, and perfectly round like a marble. As he was studying this remarkable pebble, he began to shiver, probably from excitement, and the rain felt cold on his back. I wish it would stop raining, he said. And to his great surprise, the rain stopped. It didn't gradually, as rain usually does. It ceased. The drops vanished on the way down, and the clouds disappeared. Everything was dry, and the sun was shining as if the rain never existed. Look at those ducks are like, what? What just happened? In all his young life, Sylvester had never had a wish gratified so quickly. It struck him the magic must be at work, and he guessed that the magic must be in the remarkable-looking red pebble, which indeed it was. To make a test, he put the pebble on the ground and said, "I wish it would rain again." Nothing happened. But when he said the same thing, holding the pebble in his hoof, the sky turned black. There was lightning and a clap of thunder, and the rain came shooting down. What a lucky day this is, thought Sylvester. From now on, I can have anything I want. My father and mother can have anything they want. My relatives, my friends, and anybody at all can have everything that anybody wants. He wished the sunshine back in the sky, and he wished a wart on his left hind fetlock would disappear, and it did. And he started home eager to amaze his mother and father with his magic pebble. He could hardly wait to see their faces. Maybe they wouldn't even believe him at first. As he was crossing Strawberry Hill, thinking of some of the many, many things he could wish for, He was startled to see a mean and hungry-looking lion right at him from behind some tall grass. He was frightened. If he hadn't been so frightened, he could have made the lion disappear, or he could have wished himself safe at home with his father and his mother. Oh my goodness, there's the wind. He could have wished the lion would turn into a butterfly, or a daisy, or a gnat. He could have wished many things, but he didn't. He panicked, and he couldn't think carefully. I wish I were a rock, he said, and he became a rock. The lion came bounding over, sniffed the rock 100 times, walked around and around it, and went away confused, perplexed, puzzled, and bewildered. I saw that donkey just as clear as day. Maybe I'm going crazy, he muttered. And there was Sylvester, a rock on Strawberry Hill, and the magic pebble laying right beside him on the ground, and he was unable to pick it up. Oh, how I wish I were myself again, he thought. But nothing happened. He had to be touching the pebble to make the magic work, but there was nothing he could do about it. His thoughts began to race like mad. He was scared and worried. Being helpless, he felt hopeless. He imagined all the possibilities, and eventually realized that his only chance of becoming himself again was for someone to find the red pebble and to wish that the rock next to it would be a donkey. Someone would surely find a red pebble. It was so bright and shiny. But what on earth would make them wish that a rock were a donkey? The chance was 1 in a billion at best. Sylvester fell asleep. What else could he do? The night came with many stars. Meanwhile, back at home, Mr. and Mrs. Duncan paced the floor, frantic with worry. I'm going to adjust this camera really quick so that you guys can see the picture a little bit more. There we go. Mr. and Mrs. Duncan were frantic with worry. Sylvester had never come home later than dinner time. Where could he be? They sat up all night wondering what had happened, expecting that Sylvester would surely turn up by morning. But he didn't, of course. Mrs. Duncan cried a lot, and Mr. Duncan did his best to soothe her. Both longed to have their dear son with them. I will never scold Sylvester again as long as I live, said Mrs. Duncan, no matter what he does. At dawn, they went about inquiring of all the neighbors. They're asking everybody if they had seen Duncan. They talked to all the children, the puppies, the kittens, the colts, the piglets. No one had seen Sylvester since the day before yesterday. They went to the police. The police could not find their child. All the dogs in Oatsdale went searching for him. They sniffed behind every rock and every tree and every blade of grass, until every nook and gully of the neighborhood and beyond, but found no scent of him. They sniffed the rock on Strawberry Hill, but it smelled like a rock. It didn't smell like Sylvester. After a month of searching the same places over and over again, and inquiring of the same animals over and over again, Mr. and Mrs. Duncan no longer knew what to do. They concluded that something dreadful must have happened, and that they would probably never see their son again, though all the time he was less than a mile away. They tried their best to be happy, to go about their usual ways, but their usual ways included Sylvester, and they were always reminded of him. They were miserable. Life had no meaning for them anymore. They're so devastated that they lost their son. Night followed day, and day followed night, over and over again. Sylvester on the hill woke up less and less often. When he was awake, he was only hopeless and unhappy. He felt he would be a rock forever, and he tried to get used to it. He went into an endless sleep. The days grew colder. Fall came with the leaves changing color. Then the leaves fell and the grass bent to the ground. Then it was winter. The winds blew this way and that. It snowed. Mostly the animals stayed indoors, living on the food they had stored up. One day a wolf sat on the rock that was Sylvester and howled because he was hungry. Then the snows melted, the earth warmed up in the spring sun, and things budded. Leaves were on the grass again, flowers showed their young faces. One day in May, Mr. Duncan insisted that his wife go with him on a picnic. "Let's try and cheer up," he said. "Let us try to live again and be happy even though Sylvester, our angel, is no longer with us." They went to Strawberry Hill. Mrs. Duncan sat down on the rock. The warmth of his own mother sitting on him woke Sylvester from his deep winter sleep. He wanted to shout, "Mother, Father! It's me, Sylvester! I'm right here!" But he couldn't talk. He had no voice. He was stone dumb. Mr. Duncan walked aimlessly about while Mrs. Duncan set out the picnic food on a rock. Alfalfa sandwiches, pickled oats, sassafras salad, and Timothy compote. Suddenly, Mr. Duncan saw the red pebble. "What a fantastic pebble!" he exclaimed. "Sylvester would have loved it for his collection." He put the pebble on the rock. They sat down to eat. Sylvester was now wide awake, as a donkey that was a rock could possibly be. Mrs. Duncan felt some mysterious excitement. "You know, Father," she said suddenly, "I have the strangest feeling that our dear Sylvester is still alive and not far away." I am, Sylvester wanted to shout, but he couldn't. If only he had realized that the pebble resting on his back was the magic pebble. "Oh, how I wish he were here with us on this lovely day," said Mrs. Duncan. Mr. Duncan, who looked sadly at the ground. "Don't you wish it too, Father?" she said. He looked at her as if to say, "How can you even ask a question like that?" Mr. and Mrs. Duncan looked at each other with great sorrow. "I wish I were myself again. I wish I were my real self again," thought Sylvester. And in less than an instant, pung, he was. With a picnic on his back. You can imagine the scene that followed. The embraces, the kisses, the questions, the answers, the loving looks, the fond exclamations. Look at his dad is dancing with joy. Hooray! When they had eventually calmed down a bit and had gotten home, Mr. Duncan put the magic pebble in an iron safe. Someday they might want to use it, but really for now, what more could they wish for? They all had all that they wanted. Each other. Oh, welcome back, Sylvester. The end. Isn't that a fun story? Goodness, the magic pebble. Can you imagine being a rock for a whole year? Our third book, Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs. Let's adjust the camera again. This one's a little shorter. There we go. Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs by Judi and Ron Barrett. We were all sitting around the big kitchen table. It was Saturday morning, pancake morning. Mom was squeezing oranges for juice. Henry and I were betting on how many pancakes we could each eat, and Grandpa was doing the flipping. Seconds later, something flew through the air and headed towards the ceiling and landed right on Henry. After we realized that the flying object was only a pancake, we all laughed, even Grandpa. Breakfast continued quite uneventfully. All the other pancakes landed in the pan, and all of them were eaten, even the one that had landed on Henry. That night, touched off by the pancake incident, Grandpa told us the best tall tale bedtime story he'd ever told. Across an ocean, over lots of huge bumpy mountains, across 3 deserts, and one smaller ocean. There's the craggy mountains, the 3 hot deserts, and a smaller ocean. There lay the town of Chew and Swallow. In most ways, it was very much like all other tiny towns. It had a main street lined with stores, houses with trees and gardens around them, a schoolhouse, about 300 people, and some assorted cats and dogs. Okay, see what all the people are doing? Looks like a normal little town, doesn't it? I see a dance school, gift shop, a movie theater, musicians. But there were no food stores in the town of Chew and Swallow. They didn't need any. The sky supplied them with all the food they could possibly want. The only thing that was really different about Chew and Swallow was its weather. It came 3 times a day, at breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Everything that everyone ate came from the sky. Whatever the weather served, that is what they ate. But it never rained rain, and it never snowed snow, and it never blew just wind. It rained things like soup and juice, and it snowed mashed potatoes and green peas, and sometimes the wind blew in storms of hamburgers. The people could watch the weather report on television in the morning, and they would even hear a prediction of the next day's food. Look at that. He's got his umbrella, he's got his plate and his silverware, and hanging in his closet there's dishes, anything he might need to go outside and get some food from the weather. When the townspeople went outside, they carried their plates and cups and glasses, forks, spoons, knives, and napkins with them. That way, they would always be prepared for any type of weather. If there were leftovers, there usually were. The people took them home and put them in their refrigerator, in case they got hungry in between meals. Let's look at this one a little bit closer, because these pictures are really fun. See, it's pancakes, raining pancakes, and they're just holding their plates out the window. Playing baseball. Did you see the sign in the back? It says, "Game canceled on account of pie." See that guy back there catching a piece of pie? Ooh, look at that. Lots of different pie. Lemon meringue pie, raspberry pie. Lots of different flavors. Look at this boy and his dog raining orange juice. Look, she's trying to run and catch some chicken. That's her lunch right there. Get it. The menu varied. By the time they woke up in the morning, breakfast was coming down. After a brief shower of orange juice, low clouds of sunny-side-up eggs moved in, followed by pieces of toast. Butter and jelly sprinkled down for the toast, and most of the time it rained milk afterwards. Look at that squirrel slipping on the jam. Look at that one. For lunch one day, frankfurters already in their rolls blew in from the northwest at about 5 miles an hour. There were mustard clouds nearby. Then the wind shifted to the east and brought in baked beans. A drizzle of soda finished off the meal. So when they go in for a restaurant, look at that. It's just open to the sky. And people just catch whatever food they want. Dinner one night consisted of lamb chops, becoming heavy at times with the occasional ketchup. Periods of peas and baked potatoes were followed by gradual clearing, with a wonderful Jell-O setting in the west. Look, he's got baked potatoes stuck on his antlers. The sanitation department of Chew and Swallow had a rather unusual job for a sanitation department. It had to remove the foods that fell on the houses and sidewalks and lawns. The workers cleaned things up after every meal and fed all the dogs and cats. Then they emptied some of it into the surrounding oceans for the fish and the turtles and the whales to eat. The rest of the food was put back into the earth so that the soil would be richer for the people's flower gardens. So they'd make compost out of it. Look at that truck. Oh my gosh, it's so funny. Big fork and spoon and a plate. Life for the townspeople was delicious until the weather took a turn for the worst. Spaghetti ties up town. Record-breaking pasta fall causes chaos. Traffic snarled on Lower Intestine Street. Look at all that spaghetti. One day, there was nothing but Gorgonzola cheese all day long. Gorgonzola cheese smells very strongly. It is nicknamed stinky cheese. The next day, there was only broccoli, all overcooked. Blech. Overcooked broccoli is not good. And the next day, there were Brussels sprouts and peanut butter with mayonnaise. Not very good party food, huh? Another day, there was a pea soup fog. No one could see where they were going, and they could barely find the rest of the meal. It got stuck in the fog. The food was getting larger and larger, and so were the portions. The people were getting frightened. Violent storms blew up frequently. Awful things were happening. One Tuesday, there was a hurricane of bread rolls, and all day long and into the night. There were soft rolls and hard rolls, some with seeds and some without. There was white bread and rye and whole wheat toast. Most of it was larger than they had ever seen bread and rolls before. It was a terrible day. Everyone had to stay indoors. Roofs were damaged, and the sanitation department was beside itself. The mess took the workers 4 days to clean up, and the sea was full of floating rolls. To help out, the people piled up as much bread as they could in their backyards. The birds picked at it a bit, but it just stayed there and got staler and staler. There was a storm of pancakes one morning and a downpour of maple syrup that nearly flooded the town. A huge pancake covered the school. No one could get it off because of its weight, so they had to close the school. Look at the kids, they're all excited. Yippee! No school! They're trying to lift it off with helicopters. The sanitation department gave up. The jobs were just too big. Everyone feared for their lives. They couldn't go outside most of the time. Many houses had been badly damaged by giant meatballs. Stores were boarded up and there was no more school for the children. Look at that. That man has a big noodle on his head. That woman's being chased by giant donuts. It's raining bacon and noodles and hamburgers. So a decision was made to leave the town of Chew and Swallow. It was a matter of survival. Look at this poor guy. He's gotten squashed by a hamburger. And the dog is stuck in the cheese. A flood of ice cream is headed into town. And a giant pickle went through that woman's roof. The people glued together the giant pieces of stale bread, sandwich style, with peanut butter. Took the absolute necessities with them and set sail on their rafts for a new land. Pizza and cheese slices for the sails. Ooh, that shark looks happy. Meanwhile, look back in the town. Whole hoagie sandwiches are dumping things. After being afloat for a week, they finally reached a small coastal town, which welcomed them. The bread had held up surprisingly well enough for them to build temporary houses for themselves out of it. The children began school again, and the adults all tried to find places for themselves in this new land. The biggest change they had to make was getting used to buying food at a supermarket. They found it odd that food was kept on shelves, packaged in boxes, cans, and bottles. Meat that had to be cooked was kept in large refrigerators. Nothing came down from the sky, except for rain and snow. The clouds above their heads were not made of fried eggs. No one ever got hit by a hamburger again. And nobody dared to go back to Chew and Swallow to find out what had happened to it. They were too afraid. Henry and I were awake until the very end of Grandpa's story. I remember his goodnight kiss. The next morning, we woke up to see snow falling outside the window. We ran downstairs for breakfast and ate it a little faster than usual so that we could go out sledding with Grandpa. And it's funny, but even as we were sliding down the hill, we thought we saw a giant pat of butter at the top, and we could almost smell the mashed potatoes. That giant snow hill looked like a big pile of mashed potatoes with butter on top. The end. That is such an adventurous, crazy story. Can you imagine what that would be like to live in a town where it rained food? Well, thank you so much for joining me again today. I hope that you enjoyed our little magical journeys that we took. I hope you have a great day, and I'll see you again next time.